All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Friday, October 18th, and Jake, we are just a little over 24 hours away from number one Texas hosting the number 5 Georgia Bulldogs on Saturday night at DKR. College game day is going to be there, everybody, and it is going to be one hell of a football game. Over 58 future incoming recruits, whether that be for Texas or Georgia or whoever, that remains to be seen, but it is going to be an absolute spectacle in Austin on Saturday night. This is All in Horns, your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson. And Jake, how are we feeling about a little over 24 hours before the big game?
Oddly, not as nervous as last week, which is weird when you consider the opponent is much better this week. But last week's game did end with the 12-team playoff. A little pressure's off. Yes, I want them to be perfect, but I'm more so just anxious to see how this defense is going to play against what I think we both would agree the first real offense that they've gone against this year.
Yeah, Jake, we have seen the spread continue to rise. As of right now, as we are recording this episode, it is now sitting at Texas as 5-point favorites over the Georgia Bulldogs. Why do you think that it started at 3.5? It was at 4. It's now climbed to 5. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because Georgia has looked vulnerable, and, they had the terrible first half against Alabama, came all the way back, took a lead in that game, but they just didn't, the ending scoreboard didn't look very good against Mississippi State, even though that game was really put away in the third quarter. Their defense hasn't looked quite the same. They struggled against Kentucky earlier this year. That was a game where their offense was the one that was lacking. And so they've just kind of had both sides of the ball have games where they've looked vulnerable, and Texas has not. Now, I think most people would agree part of that is, competition. The best team Texas has played is still probably Michigan, but Michigan and Oklahoma are kind of one and the same this year with good defenses, terrible offenses. And so I just think people have seen Texas dominate every game they've played, which does mean something regardless of the competition. But at the same time, Georgia's looked vulnerable, even though they probably played a little bit better of a schedule to this point.
Yeah, and I think Georgia has shown more weaknesses than Texas has. And I think that's what it kind of comes down to your point of saying, they've had closer games. Texas really hasn't had much to worry about. And Jake, I'm going to start throwing some numbers at you. All right. And we're going to go and break this down as we continue breaking down and getting more detailed into this Texas-Georgia matchup. These stats are going to be national rankings as to where the Texas offense lines up against the Georgia defense. It's going to sound like number jumble for a little bit. We'll break it down quicker or more detailed as we go on. We'll have a little bit of a discussion, and then we're going to flip side it. We're going to do Georgia offense against the Texas defense, national ranking, where these two teams line up and where these two teams have had the advantage throughout the season. Now, this can be attributed to a lot of things. This could be contributed to strength of schedule. This could be contributed to injuries and outside factors. However, the numbers are the numbers. We're 7 weeks into it, and as the famous Bill Parcells quote goes, "You are what your record says you are." And so here are the numbers broken down. Jake, the Texas Longhorns passing offense is number 11th in the country compared to the number 39th passing defense for Georgia. For the Texas offense, ranking number 40th in the country compared to the number 43rd defense in Georgia. Again, passing and rushing offense, Texas has the advantage over the Georgia defense. And first downs, Texas ranks at number 46. The Georgia defense ranking at number 24. They've got the advantage there. On third down conversion rate, Texas's offense ranks number 13 in the country compared to the Georgia defense ranked at number 32, allowing third down conversions. And in the red zone, the Texas Longhorns ranking at number 50 in terms of red zone efficiency compared to the Georgia defense ranking at 43. The defense there getting another advantage. And overall, the total offense compared to the Georgia defense Texas ranks at number 7. Georgia ranks at number 28. So on the offensive side of the ball, at least statistically, Texas has the advantage in almost every major category. What does this say to you, Jake? What do these numbers mean?
This side of the ball means a little bit more to me from the Texas side because we have seen them go against legit defenses. I don't think Georgia is that much better on defense than Michigan or Oklahoma, if better at all. But also at the same time, talking about Georgia looking vulnerable, their defense this year has looked what feels like so much more vulnerable than these previous years. And they're still the 28th defense in the country. And they have played some decent football teams. And they did shut down Clemson earlier this year, who has not lost since that game and has looked pretty darn good in the process. I mean, they've been blowing out teams, and say what you want about your schedule, but like you said, you are what your record says you are. And it says Clemson's turned out to be a pretty good football team that just got shut down by Georgia when Georgia was playing really good football in that second half. And so this side of the ball, I think it does tell a pretty good story. I think Texas has an advantage. I think Texas is going to be able to move the ball and score. But I think the biggest thing out of this that sticks out to me is are they going to win in the third downs by that margin that we see that the stats tell you? And how's the red zone going to turn out? Because I don't think a lot of field goals are going to win you this game, and you definitely can't turn it over in the red zone. So that touchdown conversion percentage is going to be very important in this game, because this isn't a game where I think Texas can go out and score 24 points and win this game necessarily.
Texas's best two opponents are almost polar opposites of what Georgia has faced. Texas's best two opponents has been Michigan and Oklahoma. Those are two defensive-oriented teams, which have probably tested the Texas offense more so than the Texas defense. Now, Georgia, on the flip side, their defense has been challenged in terms of playing better high-powered offenses, such as a Clemson and an Alabama, than Texas has. So their defense a little bit more battle-tested. So I think what you're seeing here these are true numbers to what these two programs have actually represented and what they truly are. I think Texas probably does have around the 7th best offense in the country. That at the end of the season, Texas is going to be top 10 somewhere. Are they going to be at number 7? I don't know. But Georgia, probably, again, they will end their season with a top 30 defense. Now, this is actually the 3rd best defense, in my opinion, that Texas will have faced this season. Texas yet had to be held under 30 points. Offensively, where do you think Texas lands against this Georgia defense in terms of whether it be points, efficiency, being able to move the ball, being able to control the clock, time of possession, things of that nature?
I wish I could know how Quinn Ewers is going to play, because he's going to have to play better than he did against Oklahoma, or quite frankly, he could end up getting pulled. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think if Quinn Ewers comes out and plays to his ability, which I expect him to, he typically does in these big games. I think Texas will. I'm not going to give away what my final score is going to be yet. I don't know if I fully decided it yet. Still got a little time in this episode to think about it. But I think they're going to end up over 30 points. I mean, we've talked about it a few times this year. Steve Sarkisian always seems to find a way to put up over 30 points. He did it last week against a very good defense with his quarterback not playing very well. And they found a way to put up 30-plus points in that game. Now, some of that was off of turnovers, but the offense still had over 400 yards in that game, which is very good. And the offensive line played great. And so even if Quinn doesn't play his best, I still think they could put up over 30 points in this game. I feel like it'd be crazy not to say that when they've done it at Michigan and then in the Cotton Bowl. Now they get a game at home. So I think I'm going to be picking them to probably score a little bit more than they did against Michigan and Oklahoma.
Now, Jake, where does this Texas offensive line match up against the Georgia defensive line in the front 7? Blitz packages coming in from Kirby Smart. I don't even think this is the best test that Texas has played. I think probably that Michigan defensive line is probably the best true test that Texas offensive line has gone against. The Oklahoma front 7 with Danny Stutzman, and then just a play design, the blitz design from Brent Venables, probably a little bit more challenging than what Michigan threw at them. So a little bit of a combination of both. I think those have been the two games where the offensive line played the best, with the exception, obviously, of that first possession against Michigan, where Cam Williams had like three penalties against him.
They
But
still got a field goal attempt out of that drive and got a touchdown on a bogus holding call.
Right. So, and I still think that those two games stand out to me as by far the best performances that we've seen from the offensive line. Do they show up again in another big game?
I don't see why not. I mean, I think this offensive line is proven. Now, that said, they may give up a sack or two. Georgia doesn't blow you off the stat sheet with their sacks this year. I think they were around 60th in the country.
Yeah,
with
they're
about
very
12,
very pedestrian, very middle of the road.
about 12 sacks. Texas is at 19 and they're top 10. There's not a huge difference, especially, Georgia's played some better offensive lines. So that definitely plays into that stat than Oklahoma or Texas have. And so they're not that much lower in the rankings. Yes. But when you actually look at the numbers, it's not that crazy. And flat out, I mean, they just have a ton of talent. They have more 5 stars than Texas. They have more 4 stars than Texas. Texas has a few more 3 stars than they have. So there's going to be talent all over the field. I read that there's going to be at least 20 scouts at this game. There's 492 media passes that have been handed out, I believe. And people are coming to this because they know there's at least 6 first-round draft picks, probably this incoming draft, that are going to be on the field, and who knows how many in total. And that's going to be on both sides of the ball for both teams.
I think I saw somewhere, and this is talking from, your freshman class through your senior class, your entire roster of both Texas and Georgia for the next 4 years. I think it was something about maybe around 40 draftable players that are on these two rosters taking the field on Saturday.
That seems low, honestly.
It could be low. That might be a low number.
It'll be high because keep in mind, people weren't talking about Cam Williams being a draft pick going into this year. Now he's being mocked in the first round. I have now seen that this week. We've talked about it being a possibility. I'm now seeing him mocked in the first round because he's playing that well.
All right, Jake, let's go ahead and switch it over to the Texas defense matching up against the Georgia offense. This is a clean sweep for the Texas defense. I'll go ahead and give that one away. The passing offense for Georgia ranked number 9 in the country compared to the Texas defense ranked at number 2. The rushing offense, this is the biggest one, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion. Georgia offense ranked at number 92, which seems a very, very low for what we have known the Georgia offense to be identifiable as over the last, 3, 4, 5 years. Texas's defense ranked at number 23. First down efficiency, Georgia offense ranked at number 47. The Texas defense ranked at number 5. Third down efficiency ranked at number 75, not converting on third downs at a very proficient rate for the Georgia offense. Texas defense shutting teams down on the money downs ranked at number 7. In the red zone, the Georgia offense ranks at number 24. The Texas defense ranked at number 2. And total offense compared to total defense, Georgia offense ranked at number 28 in the country. Texas with that number 1 defense in the country. By the way, last time the Texas defense was ranked at number 1 in the country. I can't remember when, but the Texas Longhorn defense is the first team in college football, or I think, in NCAA history to only allow 38 points through 6 weeks of play.
And this is the side of the ball where it gets a little bit more sketchy to me, because I do think Texas's defense is really good. Do I think they're the best defense in the country? I don't know yet. I can't say that when they haven't gone against a single QB that, as of right now, would be an NFL quarterback.
You're right.
And now they do this week. And, Georgia's offense only 28th, but they've been getting better every week. They struggled in that first half against Clemson. They did really good in the second half. Then they struggled against Kentucky. They were kind of slow in some of those matchups against Cupcakes. They were slow in the first half against Bama, and then they exploded. And then since then, they've been putting up 500 plus yards and, over 30 points easily. Carlson Beck has been picking it up. And so this is going to be a really good test. Right now, Texas, it says they're the number 2 passing defense. This is the week where you either prove you're that level of passing defense, or you're more of like, are you a top 25 passing defense that's going to struggle against really talented passing attacks? And that's what I'm going to be watching in this game. To me, that is the whole key. not even going to get into specifics of because third downs will be figured out by if they can stop the pass. Obviously, you got to stop the run. And that is one area that concerns me because I've watched just about every Georgia game against a competent opponent. And I've watched the offensive line very closely on the running plays to try to figure out what's going wrong. And a lot of it's getting to that second level. And so the linebackers are the ones who are really shutting down the Georgia running game. And so you're going to have a Benda or, a Hill and LaFau. Their only kind of knock this year has been at times shooting the gap too fast and shooting the wrong gap. And if you do that, Georgia has running backs who can make you pay. So that,
Trevor
and then how
Etienne
the
is a
secondary
stud.
plays. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is Frazier.
Yeah. Trevor Etienne and Frazier, both stud running backs, but for whatever reason, just not being able to just really break through this season. Again, through 6 weeks, I think that's kind of what your team is. Not to say you can't improve and get better at that point in time, but the numbers are what the numbers are this deep into the season. And so, going to try to figure something out. And Jake, over the next 2 weeks, not to look at too far ahead, because obviously you can't look ahead of Georgia, but over the next 2 weeks, this Texas secondary and this pass defense is definitely going to be tested between Georgia and Vandy in the passing offense and the quarterback play from these two teams. And that's very weird to say. People who aren't just keeping up with college football on the weekly basis. Did he just say Vandy? Yes, I did just say Vandy.
Yeah, that Vandy offense is scary. I mean, that
the quarterback is very good.
That is, and they have a very clever scheme. A lot of their run designs are run designs that Texas kind of struggle with, and so I'll be curious to jump into that game next week. But for this week, you just gotta continue to do what other teams have done to Georgia on stopping the run, and then hope your secondary is what you think they are. But now they have to prove it. This is finally the game to get, I've said it a few times this week, but this is finally the game to cleanse yourself of that Washington game if you're the secondary.
Jake, Jontay Cook has kind of been in the conversation circles of around Longhorn discussion, whether that be podcast on Twitter, X, Facebook, whatever it is, blogs, articles. Where does Jontay Cook fit in? Why is he not getting playing time? Why is he not seeing the field? Saw 4 plays against Oklahoma a week ago. Just was a non-factor. This offense is ran through the wide receivers blocking efficiently. I think that's been a main concern. We know his route running is phenomenal. We know his hands are pretty sure-handed, with the exception of the one play against Mississippi State. Why is he not finding a role within this offense?
I wonder if it's partly due to, unfortunately, it's really hard to see how the wide receivers are blocking all the time on TV. And
just the broadcast angle doesn't show.
And we don't get the coach's tape. So I wonder if it's that, because Chris Jackson, the wide receivers coach for Texas, he has a saying that I've read about in the last couple of weeks, and it's no block, no rock. And so it makes me wonder if that, combined with that drop that was really big against Mississippi State, that was a huge momentum killer. If you're not blocking well and then you get a chance at a big play and you have a drop like that, that combined with the amount of talent that Texas has at the wide receiver position, that can probably knock you down the depth chart pretty quick. And then when you have Silas Bolden making a play like he did in the Cotton Bowl, that certainly plays into it.
Well, then in the Mississippi State game, you make that drop, and then the guy that you're kind of competing with reps with, DeAndre Moore, is having a career game. He ends up scoring 2 touchdowns, and he makes some great catches, some big-time plays for the Texas offense to continue that momentum and really elevate Texas to the win. And so being a quarterback-friendly wide receiver in that game, that knocks you down a little bit. And as you mentioned, Bolden making the hustle play that he made, that Jordan Whittington-type play. Jake, I've noticed that this coaching staff is also very patient, however, in terms of allowing these players to find their role. And once these players find their niche, they find where they fit in, they end up succeeding very well. And that's just throughout Sark's entire tenure as the head coach. Is even Jordan Whittington had a season of, where's this guy going? Where does he fit? What are they going to do with Jordan Whittington? They found what that niche was. He ended up getting drafted. He's a big part of the Los Angeles Rams offense this season as a rookie. And it's because he found that role. He found what he's good at. He's the hustle play guy. He's the blocker down the field. He can make a big play and a big catch on third down. He's that security blanket guy. He doesn't need to be the 5-star wide receiver that he was recruited to be and be a Xavier Worthy type guy. That's not who he was. That's who Herman tried to make him. That's what his injuries didn't allow him to be. But once he found that niche, he fit in very well. So, Jake, do you think Jontay Cook could possibly find a role with a banged up Isaiah Bond? There's a possible opportunity for more playing time. We are not 100% certain of Isaiah Bond's status going into this game. Is a Georgia game a possibility that Jontay Cook might have a coming out party and find his role?
I mean, I think any game is a possibility for Jontay Cook, regardless of if Bond is playing. Jontay Cook is an outstanding talent. He was, he showed very well in his limited time in his freshman year, and he's had some flashes this year. Just unfortunately, the one that sticks out the most is probably his only real drop we've seen in his college career. And so I do think this is a chance. This is a chance for any receiver. If you put up a big game against Georgia, you're going to shoot up the draft boards, and that be it a Golden, a Ryan Wingo could have a big game as well. Obviously, Bond could still have a big game if he plays. I know Sark said he did practice well earlier in this week, and so hopefully he plays. But this is just one of those wide receiver groups that's really special because you have so many talented players that I think every week could have a different breakout guy between about 6 or 7 guys. It is the wide receiver position group. Everyone was worried about it, after last year. They're losing all this talent. This wide receiver group is better, without a doubt, in my opinion.
Easily. Jake, any other mentions on the Georgia scouting report? We got about 9 minutes scheduled. Not to say we can't go a little bit over, but we got about 9 minutes. We still have, we still want to talk, obviously give our predictions on the Georgia-Texas game and then get around the SEC a little bit and talk a little bit about that Alabama-Tennessee game and the LSU-Arkansas game. But anything else that you want to mention on the Georgia scouting report before we move ahead?
Yeah, I'll just hit on a few quick points, mainly on the Georgia offense, because I'm really intrigued to see how this matchup goes between their offense and our defense. That is the side of the ball that really just grabs my attention this week because we get to find out what Texas is on defense. But if you look at Beck and you kind of dive further into the stats, his success comes a lot in play action, which I know NFL scouts are going to love. He completes 72% of his passes in play action, just about 11 yards per attempt. He has 7 touchdowns, no interceptions in play action. Just in the standard drop back game is where it starts to kind of fall off. 65% completion percentage, which isn't bad. Only 7.7 yards per attempt there. 8 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions. So that's where the mistakes have come. So you have to shut down that run game. You can't allow him to hit home run runs and then be able to set up the play action, because then you're in deep trouble if you do that against this Georgia offense. Beck on the year is averaging just over 300 yards a game, just about 9 yards per attempt, and a 68% completion percentage. That's really good. And that is by far the best this Texas defense. And then lastly, on the offensive line, like I mentioned earlier, the run game, they're really struggling to get to that second level and make those blocks and pass off the defenders correctly. There seems to be communication errors. They've had some injuries. I know they're expecting their center back in this game. That might be big for them, though they are without, I believe it's Radcliffe or something along those lines, the guard with the mullet and just screams offensive lineman. I love it. But in the passing game, you watched the Alabama game, you saw Beck get sacked several times, but there's only been 7 sacks on the year Georgia's given up, and only 1 has been credited to be the offensive line's fault. Wow. So can this pass rush that we are pretty certain is elite, can they do it against an elite pass blocking unit? Because this Georgia offensive line is really good in pass blocking. The run blocking is where they struggle. It's kind of like the Texas offensive line, just not quite as good.
Well, that, and it's also, that falls a lot of pressure on the secondary to shut down these wide receivers and to force Carson Beck to hold onto the ball. Just for this defensive line and this pressure, a beat longer. half a second longer. Get there, make them uncomfortable. Again, we mentioned it earlier in our shows earlier in the week, Tuesday, Wednesday episode. Even if you're just touching Carson Beck and you're just hitting his shoulder pads and you're just getting there and the pressure's being felt, mistakes can possibly happen. Now, yes, you do need to get there. You need to put some contact on him because he's too good and he's actually athletic enough to run around as well. I think that's another aspect of his game that is severely underrated and kind of unmentioned amongst defenses in terms of his athletic ability to extend the play with his legs. You got to surround that pocket, collapse it down on him, and then you got to end it in sacks. But that goes with the secondary covering down the field to allow the defensive line to get home.
And we will see the corners tested in this game because Georgia has some very talented wide receivers, at least the ones that aren't on parole. And the ones that aren't on parole with ankle bracelets on, they're really good and they can catch jump balls. And Georgia will throw one-on-ones. Yeah. And so there's going to be some one-on-one matchups. And these corners are, for the first time all year, they're going to be tested and have to actually make a play on the ball because it's going to get thrown their way in this game.
All right, Jake, final predictions. Are you ready? Jake?
No.
I want to hear your prediction. I'm going to put you on the spotlight first before I make mine.
I'm going to go with a close game. I think this is going to be a game that is back and forth. Texas will trail a good amount in this game. I think they win a last-second field goal by Bert Auburn. I'm going to go 42-yarder. It'll be enough to make us sweat, especially with his kind of inconsistencies so far this year. 37-34. I don't think they cover this 5-point spread is wild to me against the Georgia.
We said that against Oklahoma. And,
yeah, Georgia's a lot better than Oklahoma.
Okay,
that was respect to the rivalry. This is respect to the actual team.
Gotcha. Okay. I've gone back and forth on this, Jake, and I'm still debating on whether or not I think this is going to be a 10 to 14 point victory for the Longhorns, or if this is going to be a 1-point victory for the Longhorns. I'm picking Texas to win this game. I just don't really, I'm not comfortable with it being a huge spread, but also I just think Texas, looking at the numbers, I just feel they are the better, more complete team. But again, we haven't played an offense like this, and I don't know how the defense is necessarily going to respond against a quarterback like Carson Beck. And so I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb. I'm going to say Texas 34, Georgia 28. I think it's right in there. I think it's going to be kind of a back and forth game. Something late in the fourth quarter is going to go Texas's way, and I think the defense is going to end up, holding on. I'm actually going to call it. I said this last week, not on air, but to Jake in a text message during the Red River game. I said Colin Simmons touchdown somewhere along the line. I can feel it in my gut, and so I'm gonna go a Colin Simmons fumble recovery, strip sack touchdown. At some point in this game. I don't know if it comes in the fourth quarter. I don't know if it's the first score of the game. I'm just saying Colin Simmons gets in the end zone.
I would, if we see a defensive touchdown in this game and they hold them to, 28, 24 points, something like that, I'm going to be all in on this defense because I do think this is probably the best, other than maybe Vandy. That's how much I respect Vandy's offense. I think this might be the best offense they go against all year. It definitely is from a talent perspective.
All right, Jake, let's go ahead real quickly around the SEC. We're not even going to go around the NCAA. We're going to go just stick it to the SEC. Number 7, Alabama, 3-point favorites in Knoxville at Tennessee. Number 11. This is a big-time rivalry game, and Tennessee, Alabama, both have not necessarily looked like they've been on their A games in the last 2 weeks or so. However, with that being said, this is always a fun game.
It's always a fun game. It's still at the end of the day, they both only have one loss. Both the teams they didn't expect it.
Is this an elimination game?
I'd have to look at their schedules. I think you could get in with 2 losses, but it also depends how it looks because I think both teams have looked bad. So it potentially it depends. I'm not confident enough. I think either of these teams could get in with 2 losses. The problem is you still have a lot of schedule to go. I know they both still have big games to come. And so it's almost essentially an elimination game. You're going to feel like your playoff hopes are over if you lose this game either way. And it's going to be interesting because this is a game that's really hard to pick. I don't know how it's been for you, but to me, it's really hard to pick because both teams have looked out of sorts at times. And Tennessee, especially on the offensive side of the ball, has not looked right the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you. Something is weird with the Tennessee offense, and I think it's more so there's a difference between scheme of what Heupel has designed for his offense, and then there's a difference between that and execution on the field. We've talked about it with Sark. Sark can come up with a beautiful scheme and get guys open and create a play design that's going to have 3 or 4 different wide receivers open. But does your team execute? Are the drag routes, are they running into each other? Are they catching the ball? Are they fumbling in untimely situations? Not that there's ever a timely situation to fumble, but that's kind of where the Tennessee offense has been. It's not necessarily the scheme and the play design. It's more so the execution from the players. They're a young team. They're led by a freshman quarterback. He's going to make mistakes. And I think that's where I'm currently at right now. But then again, Jalen Milroe, he looked lost and confused for a decent portion and stretches of that South Carolina game a week ago.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's defense is going to be a real issue for the Alabama offense. But I think Kalen DeBoer wins big games. He's done it his whole college career, wherever he's been. And I think Tennessee's offense is now at a point where they got to prove they're actually good because they have looked pretty bad in pretty much every game against a good defense. I mean, that Oklahoma game, I thought it was mainly because they were calling safe plays. They ran it 52 times or whatever. But their offense hasn't looked good in any of these other games. And maybe that's why they were running it so much, was they know their passing offense isn't where it needs to be. And because of that, I am going to take Bama to win this game because we have seen their offense perform at a very high level against a very good defense. We have not seen that from Tennessee yet. And so I'm going to take Alabama to win this. I think they're going to win it handedly, 34-21.
Oh, nice. I'm going to go Bama in overtime against Tennessee and break the hearts of Rocky Top there. And so I'm going to go Bama in overtime. I don't know. I'm 27-21. Yeah. 27-21.
Yeah, that works. I don't think they normally kick the extra point.
Something along those lines. They'll score, and it'll be one overtime, and maybe Tennessee gets the ball first. They stop them. They go in, score a touchdown, and then game's over. So, all right. LSU, 2.5-point favorites over Arkansas. This number 8 LSU team, Jake, they led for 0 seconds of the game against Ole Miss. However, they won that game. A lot of people, I think your perspective of the LSU Tigers, if they lose that game against Ole Miss a week ago at Death Valley, is completely switched going into this game if they don't win that game. I think some people are like, Nussmeier, wow, what a performance. Wow, he really turned it on at the end of the game, and he really converted some big-time 4th down conversions, 3rd down conversions. He played so well in that game. I think he threw a little over 50% in that game. I don't think his numbers were fantastic, but they win the game. Again, if they lose that game, I think our perspective and the outlook on LSU is completely different going into this game, which I kind of appreciate the 2.5 spread and the respect to Arkansas.
They deserve some respect. They're 5-2, and they should be 6-1. That Oklahoma State, and this is the problem with Arkansas, is they find ways to lose games that you can never imagine a team could lose. That loss against Oklahoma State this year was horrible, especially now seeing that Oklahoma State is not good at all.
Yeah,
but they doubled them in yardage. They had almost 700 yards of offense to Oklahoma State's 300 something. And it makes this game hard to pick. Arkansas is a tough place to play. Texas fans know that. They got to travel there here in a few weeks. And at the end of the day, Arkansas is 5-2. They're 2-1 in the SEC with that loss against A&M, which was another game that they kind of let out of their grasp. And to me, it's going to come down to, can Arkansas play well, and then can they get out of their own way and win this game? And I do think it's interesting because LSU had perfect conditions last week. You had Ole Miss, who is coming off multiple road games, then having to go to LSU, and you had LSU at home, I believe, off a bye week.
Yep.
And they were losing the entire game.
Yep.
And I've said that they're overrated. I still think they're overrated because I don't
you've
think
called them frauds. You've called them frauds since week 1, Jake.
I know, and I'm not going to pick Arkansas to win this game because I don't trust them. I'm not going to let my hate for LSU blind the fact that I have watched Arkansas lose games that look impossible to lose. It was a miracle they beat Tennessee, but Tennessee's offense looked horrible. So I'm going to go LSU. I think it will be a close game. I think Arkansas will be up 2 or 3 scores in this game and blow it and lose something like 31-27.
Wow. I'm going to go Arkansas with the win. I think they finally hold on and they move to 6-2. I think LSU, I'm kind of with you. I don't know if they're frauds. I just don't. At some point, it's got to run out.
They don't look like a top 10 team.
They don't look like a top 10 team. And I think that this number 8 ranking is too high for them. The AP poll is just forced to put teams in certain places, except regardless of how they look on the field. And so I'm going to say Arkansas. And I think Arkansas wins this one in a drag out ugly game, 21-18. All right, Jake, let's go ahead, wrap up the show. Great show, dude. I really like this one. I thought we had killed it on this one, not to pat ourselves on the back or anything, but Texas, Georgia, we will have our immediate reactions following this game on Saturday night. We will release that episode following the game as soon as we possibly can. We drop these episodes Tuesday through Friday at noon each and every day for your daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns. Again, for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. Welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.